You've already heard the story of me staring up into the night sky and feeling awe in speaking with the kids. And I will never forget the weirdness of that moment, of feeling the earth beneath my feet and staring up and feeling the sense of wonder and connection to the mystery of the universe that my physics teacher had just informed me that I'm looking back into the past, thousands if not millions of years. As the pinpricks of light hit my eyes, the only word I can use to describe it is awe, our theme for the month. But the weirdest part of this whole story was that it was not the first time I'd ever looked up at the night sky. But this moment was the first time I had ever looked up at the night sky and not been able to recognize any of the constellations. Because I was in the Andes Mountains in the southern hemisphere, and the sky is completely different. It was like it was a whole new world, to quote a Disney film. My family was on a pilgrimage to Machu Picchu, where my mother, the inimitable Frankie B, had wanted to go since she was in 3rd grade in West Texas, and we had got this opportunity. And so we were standing in this sacred site, a wonder of the world, a place full of awe and mystery, and I was stunned to silence about how complex and mysterious and wild the universe is. The only way I can try to share that feeling with you is to tell you this story. We're talking about telling stories today. Myths, legends. We tell a lot of these stories. As Janet said, we tell them to try and make sense of who we are. We tell mythic stories to tell us something about ourselves, about our world, about the nature of reality. Storytelling is an ancient spiritual practice. For as long as humans, I would reckon, have been able to stand upright and look up at the sky, we have been telling stories about what that means. To see the shifting skies, the twirling galaxies, we try to find our place in it. Asking the questions, wrestling with the truths. For a long time, our people believed these stories. But religious myth is not the only kind of story that we tell about ourselves and the only kind of story that we believe. Religious myth. Right? Myths don't just have to have elements of divine births or creation stories or the existence of a supernatural deity in the sky. Other kinds of myths appeal to those of us who are humanist, agnostic, atheist, or simply non-believers, even if we don't always recognize them as myths. Many of us don't put stock in the stories of the great floods, semi-divine humans, or life beyond birth. However, these secular myths and stories often have just as much power. You do not have to be a practitioner of any particular religious tradition to believe and recognize some of these myths. We can't always count on staying outside of a building like this or other houses of worship to remain free from legends, folk tales, mythic elements. Consider these. The myth of the lost cause of the South in the American Civil War. The myth of manifest destiny in the creation of America. The myth of American exceptionalism. The myth of objective religious truth, that there is one right way. Walling off traditional religion does not always guarantee us a rational and ordered mindset about how the world works, about who we are and how we fit into it. Products of the humanist manifesto generation from the 1930s, who found themselves disregarding any traditional religion, they helped form the basis of our Unitarian Universalist Association today. They found themselves struggling in the face of the mystery of the universe. They wanted to do away with traditional religious trappings, but there was something still that seemed to be missing. And it facilitated the development of something we call religious humanism, which for some might be an oxymoron, but I can tell you it is a strong historic tradition. Religious humanism that had to have a religious response to the awe and the mystery of the universe. Our first source in Unitarian Universalism, the transcendent wonder It's what we're all wrestling with. The mystery of humanity, of life itself. So I resonate with that journey that they went through. The journey away from traditional religious language, through agnosticism, humanism, atheism, before returning to, in my sense, Christianity as a theology that speaks to me, that helps me make sense of my life and my place in this world. It helps me wrestle with the big questions that I feel in December. What have I been doing with my life for the past year? What's coming next? In the season of Advent that is about waiting, what am I waiting on? I often thought that I did not need the mythic stories about creation, about miracles, about the supernatural to help me find my place in the world. Going to seminary for me helped me look beyond these stories, beyond the myth, beyond the legend, beyond the woo-woo, to see these stories for what they are. And Dr. Anthony Penn is an African-American humanist, and he offers this perspective from African-American humanism. A similar perspective. He says, Black humanism holds up this principle: an appreciation of African-American cultural production and a perception of traditional forms of Black religiosity as having cultural importance as opposed to any type of cosmic authority. That we recognize things because they're from our culture. They're part of our people's history, even if we don't ascribe any supernatural authority to them. You can have respect and honor for the myths and the culture that created it. You can recognize the great works of literature and history and sociology that some of our scriptures are, without feeling that you are abandoning your brain at the door. A phrase I often hear. I do not want to check my brain at the door. Another way to think about this is that when you hear a story that has mythic elements in it, rather than rejecting them wholesale, as we maybe want to do around this time of the year, for those of us for whom that does not speak, you might ask yourself, what are these stories pointing us towards? What's behind the myth? What's behind the legend? What are the questions they're trying to explain or wrestle with? Is it the wonder of being alive? Is it the mystery of being alive and having to die? Is it the wonder of the universe, the cosmos, the infinite connectedness of the galaxies when you stare into the sky? Here's a story. A legend, a myth, the history of Machu Picchu. The history of this place, if you don't know anything about it, it was discovered by a white guy in the early, like 1920 something maybe. No one is quite sure if this was a famed lost city of the Incan people, the Inca people of Peru, what we now know as Peru. Hiram Bingham, who was connected with Yale University, shout out to New Haven, surmised that this was the lost city of the Inca. And he spent his life trying to answer the question of what was the significance of this place that he discovered with 3 families already living there and farming there for generations. Many believe this city has some astronomical significance. There are all these monuments that have some connection to the stars in Machu Picchu. It's oriented in a way that shows you true north, east, west, and south. There's the famed Incan Trail. This trail that runs from Cuzco to Machu Picchu. People walk on it, hike on it, camp on it. But the Incan Trail is not the most direct path from Cuzco to Machu Picchu. In fact, it's a path that doesn't make any sense at all. It goes around and up and down and then comes in from the wrong way. People have been trying to answer the question, why? What's the point? One possible suggestion is that the Incan Trail is supposed to mirror the mythic story of the first Incan people, who, according to the legend, came from the island of the Sun at Lake Titicaca and came to Machu Picchu in this great mythic story, where the sun god, whom the Incan people worshipped, was born after a great flood and then a period of long darkness where light appeared out of nowhere. Sound familiar? Solstice, Christmas, the light in the darkness, Hanukkah and the light in the temple. These stories share elements, right? But no one knows why the Inca Trail goes where it does. Rather than simply following the more sensible path along the river, the Inca built the impractical but visually stunning Inca Trail. The final leg, which may have been a pilgrimage, would have concluded with climbing the steps to the Sunstone, the highest spot in the main ruins. It's a theory. It's a story we tell ourselves. It might have mythic elements to it. But it's the story that we tell to try to make sense of the world, of what we see, of what we experience, to try and find order amidst the randomness and the chaos of which we see on TV every day. That is the function for me of religious searching, to try and find order amongst the chaos. But it's not a question that only religion tries to ask, right? Science does the same thing. So we're going to get scientific here. Buckle in. We're going to talk quantum physics. Are we ready? Quantum physics. I had to watch the quantum physics video for dummies. That is literally what it was called, so do not feel bad if this is a stretch for you. Here we go. Quantum physics. We're familiar with general physics, right? That two places cannot occupy the same space at the same time, right? I push on this, something pushes on me. That's regular physics. Richard Feynman, who got his Nobel Prize for studying quantum physics, said this: if you think you understand quantum physics, comma, you do not understand quantum physics, period. It turns out that's not exactly true. We do kind of understand how it works. But the idea behind quantum physics is that the world is not as neat and orderly as we thought. That a long time ago, people thought they had figured out how the world works and that it was neat and orderly. Every action has a complete and opposite reaction. They even spread it to religion. They said that God is like the great clockmaker in the sky who just started the universe going, and it works just like a great machine, right? Well-oiled. This is the Newtonian view of atoms and matter and phases. Quantum theory states that the universe is full of energy that is made up of waves. Waves that are not physically real. Stay with me. In fact, at any given moment, you cannot say for sure where something like a piece of matter, an electron, think back to your chemistry, a photon, a piece of light, you cannot say for sure where they actually are at any moment. They do not have defined space. There is only a range within this wave where they actually are. Until you actually measure and run a test to see where the electron or the photon or we are. That only once you measure, only once you observe, only once you come into relationship with the something does it appear somewhere. You can only get a range of answers. You cannot know for sure until the photon appears literally out of nowhere. That is awesome. That a quantum wave is not real until you measure it. That the universe is in fact random and wild and mysterious. For me, that is exciting. For you, that might be terrifying. Both, I think, are appropriate reactions. This theory that the waves of energy are not real until they are. That the mystery is a mystery until it's not. It's kind of mythic, right? It's so hard to understand. This was a debate between scientists Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, I'm sure we've all heard of, he had this old school view of the world. That is neat and orderly and everything has an explanation. We just have to find it. Right? He's famous for saying that things can be explained to a precise point. Objects can't go fast, can't be in two places at once. E equals mc squared. Right? That nothing is faster than the speed of light. When you look up into the stars, you're looking into the past. And that's as fast as things can go. Niels Bohr was the quantum physics guy. He said, no, actually, you can't say where things actually are at any given time. You can only guess this probability in this wave. Things can be in two places at once. And maybe there is something faster than the speed of light. Right? So there's this famous thought experiment called Schrodinger's cat. It's the idea, it's kind of graphic, but stay with me. If you put a cat in two boxes and you close the lid, there's one cat. You don't know for sure which box it's in until you open it, and you're either right or you're wrong. But the idea behind quantum physics is that when the box is closed and no one is able to observe it, the cat is in fact in both boxes at the same time. And it's only once you observe it that you find out. They do this experiment with electrons and with photons, with pieces of light, and they find that that's exactly what happens. And no one can explain it. No one can explain what happens going from that quantum realm, where everything is mysterious and wavy and energy, to our world, where everything is solid and firm and orderly. Einstein heard this and said, "Are you telling me," I don't think that's exactly his accent, but he said, "Are you telling me that if I stop looking at the moon for 1 second, that it disappears? Is that what you're telling me?" And Niels Bohr was kind of like, "Yeah, that's kind of how it works. I can't explain it, but that is what the science is telling me." Weirder still, there's a process that's called entanglement, where two electrons, photons, two pieces of something become entangled, and no matter the distance that they are separated, there is still something that connects them. They have a spin to them. I don't really want to get into that because I don't understand it, but if you know which way one is spinning, you know which way the other is spinning too, no matter the distance that separates them. Even conceivably, from here to where Voyager 1 is, if there were two pieces of entangled quanta, they can communicate in some way. They are connected in some way, faster than the speed of light. One way I've heard this described is that gravity, that time and space, that it's not like just this great expanse, that it's more like a great blanket, that is all connected. And that when you tug on one end, you immediately feel the tug on the other end of the galaxy, or the other end of the universe, regardless of space and time. It's called non-locality. I hear that, and I think back on the stories of the Incan people and Native Americans, traditional religious practice, who looked up and saw the great blanket of the sky. And they weren't that far off, actually. Maybe. Lastly, there's something called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which says when you're trying to figure out this wave, you're trying to figure out where things are, that if you get one part of the equation, if you get one part of the answer, the other part gets further. That the more precise you get on one half, the other end goes to infinity. You can't know everything. If you know one thing, you don't have a shot of knowing the other. If you know this one, you lose out. It's almost like if you know everything, you would in fact be the supreme deity. If you were able to explain everything, the mystery would no longer exist. And I wonder if the mystery has to exist. That there has to be space for awe and wonder. That there has to be a space for not knowing. It is our uncertainty and our limits that connect us and create in us a need to tell stories and ponder the great mystery. It is human to do so. I believe it is why the Inca built this trail in this roundabout way as a pilgrimage. Not so you could get from point A to point B quickly, so that you would go on this journey, presumably with other people, and that you were prepared and in relationship to observe the sacred space when you got there, even if it did not physically exist before you observed it. It is about the journey, about connection, about preparation, and about relationship. I wonder if that's what we're being asked to look for beyond the myths and the legends. Friends, in these holy days, when myths and stories are all around us, if they do not speak to your logical center or your religious experience, that is okay. I invite you to look beyond those stories to see what they are pointing us towards, to ponder your place in the mystery of the universe, wherever that is, to feel what you feel and to know that the story may not give you the truth about what's actually going on in the universe, but it might show you the truth of what the universe actually is. Wild, random, awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And that it is built on this connection that transcends space and time. Not just between little pieces of electrons and photons, but I think between us. That's what we speak about when we talk about covenant, that we are bound together in this relationship. I take heart in that we are an entangled people, that we're making our way across the stars on a fantastic voyage, as we named our satellites, that we are myth in the making, that we might write our own myths, as Janet so eloquently stated. We might tell our own stories to make our own sense of the world, to feel wonder and awe, to gaze into the mystery and feel connected more to this earth and more to each other. We need only look up at the night sky to see that proof. May it be so. Amen.